Well, Tim, we made it. We're here, landed on the ice in Alton Bay, New Hampshire, next to Laconia, if you want to go check it out. I mean, this is, as I understand it, this is the nation's only legal FAA ice runway airport that opens, if it opens, every year, and they're having a great year this year.
Yeah, it's been super busy, breaking records for weekly landings. They had a great opening day on Saturday, so it's beautiful weather. You got to come out.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I will say, seriously, on those new Michelin Pilot tires, they're fantastic. I mean, sometimes the plane doesn't get to fly for a couple weeks or something. I don't feel flat spots on them. They handle the weight. I can really load this up. I mean, you get a lot of weight in an A36 sometimes. I'm just saying. So, I mean, you know, they feel fantastic. And I do think I'm going to give them some credit for that landing, because the landing did work out. We're in one piece. All of us are here, and the plane is good.
It was great. Great landing. Great landing.
So if you get a chance, check it out. Alton Bay, Bravo 18, near Laconia. You can go there if you want a regular airport before you come over this way. And a little thanks for the Michelin Man. We got a little mascot now to fly with us.
Made the trip.
That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jeff.
We're going to go enjoy ourselves here. And there's planes coming all over the place. It's so busy. It's so much fun. And I just encourage all of you to do it. For SocialFlight, I'm Jeff Simon, and I wish you all blue skies. Welcome to Cockpit2Cowl, the show that explores general aviation safety topics from the combined perspective of flight instructors, pilots, and mechanics, exploring both pilot and aircraft topics to make aviation safer and more enjoyable. I'm Jeff Simon, pilot, AMP/IA, and president of SocialFlight.
I'm Brian Schiff, CFI and ATP.
Well, Brian, what do you think of that video, man? Wasn't that fun? Cool. I wish you were up here for it.
That's something I've never done. I've never had a stuffed animal with me when I fly before. That's really cool. I thought that was the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. No, that looked like a blast. I think that's definitely on the bucket list, and I'm going to have to get up there and do that with you.
It was a ton of fun. Special thanks, of course, to Michelin for making that trip possible. We did a video shoot for them up there, and what I said there is true. It was amazing. I've enjoyed being on those Michelin Pilot tires. It's their brand new tire that has they have a ton more tread depth than any of the other tires ever have, and they really are quite fantastic. And so I give some credit to them that I could still steer a little bit and taxi a little bit while I was being up there. But it was some pretty cool stuff. Brian, normally we wait till the end of the show before we talk about kind of what's coming next, what to wait for, and stuff like that. But we've got some big special things this time. So I want to lead off actually with that. And the first one is what everybody should wait till the end for. You want to explain that?
Yeah, we've put together, Jeff from the mechanical standpoint and me from the flight operations standpoint, a winter flight operations checklist. And those of you who watch this program are going to get a free copy of that. And we'll put a QR code up at the end so you can download that. It's got everything we're going to talk about tonight, plus a lot more considerations for flying in the winter.
Yeah, it is very, very thorough. A lot of effort went into this, and so I'd encourage everyone to make sure that they get this kind of winter flying. You call it a checklist, but the reality is this is a bunch of pages, and it's really some fascinating stuff. I know I learned a good amount from working with you on this project. And so again, as Brian mentioned, stay to the end, and there'll be a QR code where you can download for free this checklist. And then the other thing, Brian, is 2 days from now, you've got a really good Schiff show coming up. You want to tell everybody about that?
I do. I'm excited about that. We've got Greg Reverdow, who was one of the founders of Pilot Institute. They've gotten over 400,000 pilots have been through their program and passed their written tests and their training. Got some fantastic stuff. What I love about what he's doing is he's using modern technology, and he's even got some VR stuff. If you've got the Meta goggles, you can put it on and you can take an engine apart and put the pieces back on and see what goes where. I think for a maintenance aspect, you would love to see that. But also you can pre-flight a 172 with virtual reality, but also the videos that he makes are fantastic. And he uses that technology to also put together accident investigation videos. And we're going to go over one of the ones that he made about an aircraft that flew into bad weather and why that happened and how you can avoid it and how easy it could happen.
Wow. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
I also learned a lot from you reading your contributions to our checklist that we made. And how many years do you have as a mechanic?
You really want me to explain the gray hair that's going on here? Let's say
Right.
it's measured in decades. Can I say that?
Yeah, you could say decades. What is it? 4 point what?
Thanks. Thanks. Exactly. No,
Well, I got
yeah.
40 years flying. You probably got at least what, 15 years?
I'm coming up on 30 years as a mechanic and flying and stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of time in there.
So we got over 70 years of knowledge that went into, and
Oh,
we
is
take
that how
for
we're going to do
granted.
it? We're going to add the numbers together now? Yeah.
Well, between the two of us, yeah, maybe between the two of us, we make one person.
I like that. So anyway, that's great, and we've got some good stuff coming up as well. And I just want to give people a heads up. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the different things going on, of course. With all that I mentioned, it was interesting flying in there, and that's going to play into some of our discussion. It was also, you know what, Brian, I'll tell you something else. It was also really interesting because I recently switched over to the Hartzell Navigator prop. That's got those big fat blades on it, and it's their composite. Matter of fact, I'll show you if I can a picture of it. But it's interesting. It had I would consider a major impact on flying into there because it acts as a pretty substantial brake when you really.
Yeah.
It gave incredible power for takeoff, incredible climb rate, but it also really slows you down when you need to. That was interesting. It's interesting how technology plays a role in many of these things. And it was the tires, it was the prop, it was things like that. Even headsets from Lightspeed that are sensing for carbon monoxide, which is so dangerous in winter. So a lot of technology seems to play into winter flying.
Yeah, it pokes its fingers and tentacles in many different ways that we don't even realize. But I can see how that prop would help slow you down.
Yeah.
All the more reason to pull that back if you ever had to glide. If you had.
That's for sure. Exactly. And then the last thing before we jump into tonight's broadcast, we have a very, very special show next Tuesday night on the SocialFlight live show. That's socialflightlive.com if you're looking for that. Darren Pleasance, okay? We know there's a lot of discussion going on around this. The former president of AOPA, incredible human being. I consider him a very close friend, wonderful and fantastic person, who is no longer with AOPA at the moment, is going to be coming on SocialFlight Live. And I'll tell you right up front, we're not going to focus on the controversy. We're not going to focus on what people are saying about all that stuff, but I want to make sure that we spend time. Darren wants to get his message out about what he experienced and wants to do in general aviation, what he thinks needs to happen in general aviation and from the organizations that support GA. It's a really passionate and beautiful message from someone I deeply respect. And so I'm really looking forward to him coming on, but I want you all to know about that to make sure you do not miss that show. I think this is going to be the first time, aside from just a quick, video from him or something, that we really talk. And I think there'll be a lot that'll come out of it.
I look forward to seeing that. And please tell him I said hello, because you won't hear me during the program.
All right, so let's dive into winter flying. And Brian, how do you want to attack this in terms of a format of covering all the topics?
I think first I should get my winter coat on, but luckily it's nice and warm here in the house. I think we should start with preparing for the winter. How winter is coming, right? I think we had an episode called Winter is Coming, and we talked about some of these things. But let's talk about, okay, the season is approaching. What do we need to do to prepare for the season? Then let's get into the order of a flight, pre-flight.
Yeah, I like that.
And so on, taxi, startup, taxi, and takeoff, en route, and landing.
Okay, well, so then let's start it with what do you need to do to get ready? What I think is interesting is people are used to the way that they change over maybe their home for winter, they prep their yard, like a lot of things go through a seasonal change if you live at least in the northern climates where winter involves snow and ice. And we need to do the same thing for our aircraft and for our hangar, for everything, or your tie down outside, whatever it is. And that's some pretty important stuff. And so let's talk about some of those things. Like, for example, even though it's not as cold as up here, what do you do with the Citabria, Brian?
I don't fly it because it has a lot of holes in the fabric and a lot of air comes in. Even though I got front and back heat, it gets pretty cold in that. About 32 freezing, believe it or not, is the cutoff for how I'm comfortable in it. But I will tell you, really a lot of fun comes in winter flying because of the extra performance that you get out of your airplane. I think the density altitude here was about 3,000 or 4,000 feet below sea level a couple weeks ago, and if you can handle it, that's fantastic. But you don't realize, like, you can't grab a yoke or a stick with bare hands because they are cold. All the metal that you normally touch, you take for granted, and it's really tough to touch things. So obviously you've got to have gloves, you've got to have jacket, coat, winter. I say wear layers, plan on having layers, because you take them off as your aircraft heats up, and then also if you get CO2 poisoning or carbon monoxide poisoning, I'm sorry, like you had mentioned earlier, you've got to turn your heater off or maybe even open a vent. And sometimes that can be very cold, and so you want to be able to put those clothes back on. But also, as we talked about in a couple episodes ago, that clothing can also serve as a cushion in the event you have to make a crash landing. So that's always, you know, another aspect of that. Plan a lot more time for your pre-flights. I think getting your airplane ready, you're going to have a lot more to say about how to winterize your airplane. And I really look forward to hearing that. But winterizing as a pilot, you just need to have the right clothing and kind of get your mind in order as well. Consider where you're parking, where you're going to be, and how long it's going to take, you know, to get ready to fly an airplane.
So I like to think about it as kind of let's start inside the aircraft where, you know, things are easy. And one thing is, this is a good time to empty everything out of your plane, the same way you think about converting over maybe your closets or whatever for what you're going to be wearing for the winter. Like, let's get everything out. Let's get everything out of your flight bag and evaluate what it is, because it's a different season. And you want to look at this and say, what do I want in this flight bag for the cold? What do I want in this aircraft for the cold weather? And what do I need to do differently that way? So I think for me, it sort of starts there, which can involve making sure if you've got extra batteries that they're fresh, that they're new. Batteries don't perform well in the cold in general. And I'm not talking just about the aircraft battery. I mean, the AA's for your flashlight, anything that's rechargeable. We'll talk about it during pre-flight, but really kind of consider converting everything that you can off. Give your plane a good waxing job, or if you use instead of wax some type of if you use a coating on your aircraft or anything, this is the time to do it. That's going to make it easier for ice and snow to come off the aircraft. Do something like prepare, if your plane is outside, having covers, not just for the canopy, but for the wings and the tail. Everything you can think of that you can prepare in advance and start getting ready, that really matters. If you need to get ready to set up, if you're tied down outside, have something that's underneath your tail in case the tail were weighed down by snow, so it can tilt back and still be safe. That's important. You mentioned CO2. That's a huge one. Have your mechanic inspect your muffler, even if it's not time for your annual. It doesn't take long. It won't cost much. They may even just do it with a borescope for free, and give yourself that chance, and then test it yourself. Get a CO2 monitor, or if you use the Lightspeed Delta Zulu headsets that have that built in. You don't. This is kind of a theme of every time that we talk, and I'm always talking maintenance. You don't want to set yourself up for that moral dilemma where you go to the airport, you're cold, you're running the engine, you pull something, and that's when you experience the problem. You want to do it when you're not planning on flying and you're going to the airport and it's not that chilly, and it's like, this is my day to get everything ready and find out if I've got a problem.
Yeah, that's a good point. And when you mentioned taking things out of the airplane, I remember one of the things I'll do, we carry water, sometimes in the airplane, but de-water the airplane, anything inside the airplane that could freeze. You just never know how many little things you have that might have fluid in it that could freeze while your airplane is parked. And you want to obviously do that before the cold weather sets in and something could freeze, especially if it's a soda or something that could explode. I had a friend who did have a soda explode inside his airplane, and oh man, what a mess that made.
And corrosive, by the way, just so you know.
Yeah, exactly. And I also get a carbon monoxide detector, like the kind that is battery operated that you could have in your house, and I put it on the floor. I'm not sure, but doesn't carbon monoxide sink?
Well, yeah, carbon monoxide does, and someone already corrected me. I accidentally said CO2, but
Yeah, I
yes.
heard that too, but I wasn't going to correct you. We all know what you meant. If they knew what you meant enough to correct you, then they knew what you meant.
Then we're good.
Yeah. So anyway, I like that. I have it. I test it, and it's interesting to watch those. They're very sensitive. A digital readout on it. Not just don't get those stickers that have the circle on it that change colors. Oh, I hate those. But this one, you can see a little bit of a readout, even when you're just using your normal heat, and then you just open the window and watch the number go down. It's amazing how quickly they read and how sensitive they are. So I have one of those, and I put it on the floor of the airplane when I'm flying in the winter as well, whenever I'm using my heat in the airplane.
I like that. I like that. And you know, one of the interesting things is that in a lot of aircraft, you will find that in certain regimes of flight, flaring or slowing down or taxi with a certain type of wind, you'll find you do get some CO2 and sometimes a decent amount, CO, I keep saying, coming in. Exactly. I'm just going to keep doing it for the entire show.
C2O2.
Exactly. That keeps coming in, and it's important to find those things and seal them up. And it's a good time. Again, this isn't work you're going to do in the winter. This is work you want to do in the fall when it's still fine, and you can say, where's it? Look in the wheel wells. Look in other areas. Look and find out how it's getting in, so that change your door seals or evaluate it. And find the problem and solve it before it gets cold, because that's a theme we're going to be talking about. I love the phrase that you always have about, say it, Brian, come on. What's your, you have two speeds?
Yeah, slow and screw up. Set yourself up so you can operate at a slow speed. But I like the idea of going to the airport when you're not planning to fly, because you have a whole different set of motives, and you can take your time and you can do it right. I recently had this experience. Now that I have a vehicle that has a tire pressure monitor system, we had that big cold snap here in Texas, and it got really cold, and all of a sudden I'm getting all these tire pressure warnings. We used to have some of the tire pressures indicators on the airliners when we pre-flight them, but to save money they took them off. But we were talking earlier, and you were mentioning how important that is, but what happens to the pressure inside the tire when the temperature changes that much? Yeah, and I think I know we're getting into pre-flight now, but I think it's something to think about before the weather gets cold while your airplane's at the airport. What's going to happen while your airplane's sitting there and the temperature goes from 70 to, say, 20?
Well, that's a big one, right? And temperature affects everything that includes anything that involves pressure, to say the least, and it has a pretty significant effect. In general, it's about 1 degree. 1 psi for every 10 degrees of change in outside air temperature. But the practical effect of what you actually see is actually quite a bit greater than that, because as you go through this and the rubber is contracting and things are happening with dissimilar materials, you tend to see a greater effect than even that. And if you don't pay attention to that, it can really ruin your day, because keep in mind, this is very different than an automotive tire. You have a tube, and in a tube tire, as opposed to a tubeless tire, which most general aviation aircraft are, then you also have to worry about shifting. When you get at low pressures, you run the risk of the tire rotating without the tube, or putting pressure on the stem, which can do even more damage. So I've seen at the airport planes that are parked there that you can tell are low, and in many cases, if they've been sitting, if it's cold, they won't actually sink as much and be quite as obvious to really tell you as a good indicator what's really going on with that pressure. And the last thing you want to do is just go and start taxiing, go fly, and then have that problem on landing, because it seems to me pilots don't have enough of an appreciation about how bad things can go if they have a low tire, they touch down, they get that instant spool up of that wheel that goes against the valve stem or shifts that, and you can basically have a blowout. And the equivalent.
Well, I didn't appreciate it, until I had my tail wheel was too low, and I didn't check tire pressures regularly. I did it every now and then. I do it before every flight now, because I had a tail wheel come off the rim, solely because it didn't have enough pressure in it. And
Yeah.
so I learned to appreciate that. And are all tire pressure checkers the same, or are the $2 ones you get at AutoZone as good
They're
as
not.
no?
They're not the same at all. I'd really encourage someone to go and get a high quality one. The digital ones are better than the analog ones, but get a high quality one. But I think one of the hardest things is really, again, about experientially or psychologically getting out there when it's cold, when there's slush on the ground, when any of these situations, and you're looking at this like, are you really going to get down on your knees and crawl under there and check the
Right.
pressure? Or especially you have something like a Cirrus, and you've got to like roll it before you can get access through the little door. It seems like you're asking a lot, but if you're flying in these conditions where it was 50 degrees and now all of a sudden it's 20 degrees, you're taking an awfully big risk just assuming.
So maybe getting ready for winter before the season hits means have a can of air or maybe a small air compressor handy that to be able to do something like that easier, than a bicycle pump. My friend Steven corrected me that carbon monoxide is slightly lighter than air, so it mixes rapidly and it doesn't form a layer like propane or gas vapor. So I guess I'm not going to keep my CO detector on the floor anymore. You can put it anywhere in the airplane. So thanks for that.
Well, so again, try to look for the stable things. What I try to do is I do try to check it as often as possible for tire pressure. And in addition to that, think about what's happening with temperature. If you get a particularly cold day that is typical of your flying that you might be flying on, go out there and set the temperature then, so that at least you stand the best chance when flying again. For it to be at that temperature. And then the other thing is to check what's happening with your struts, because there we have nitrogen, and even though nitrogen itself is an inert gas, it still expands and contracts. It just doesn't have nearly the impact because you're generally dealing with hundreds of pounds of pressure as opposed to a little bit. So it doesn't vary as much, but what does happen is that you get expansion and contraction of the metals for the entire strut assembly. And that can cause leaks. That change of dynamic can mean that, all of a sudden we lost hydraulic fluid or we lost pressure because of that change. And same deal, like you do not want to fly with a flat strut at all. Aircraft are not designed to handle that. I think people don't really understand. They are really not designed to handle it. If you land and get contact, metal on metal contact with no cushioning, your structure is not designed to handle that, and you're putting the airframe at risk.
I can imagine. And along the lines of things that contract and expand in the heat or cold with temperature, also if you have oxygen bottles, you're going to see a lower pressure that is probably okay because of the temperature. Like we pre-flight our oxygen bottles for crew oxygen on the airliner, and our fire extinguishers, the CO2 cartridges that blow up our escape rafts on the airliner. And if it's really cold outside, we go to a chart to see what is an allowable temperature, because it's going to be below the green arc. Be ready to see something like that, and then be able and determine whether or not it's okay. If it's just barely under the green arc when it's cold and it's normal in the warm, it's probably a normal indication.
Here's a surprising one that you might not have thought of. I'm sure you do at the airlines, but the average GA pilot is your fire extinguisher inside the aircraft.
Right.
I've seen the ones with gauges, and when it is cold, those things are much farther down than they are otherwise, and that itself might put you out of the green.
And that's what I was saying, that we have a tolerance chart. So if we're out of the green, before we call maintenance, even on the fire extinguishers, we're supposed to look at this chart and see if it's this temperature, then it should be this pressure. And there's oxygen tanks and fire extinguishers, same thing. There's a normal pressure that is okay for that low temperature, and we'll look at that.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So the other thing I want to cover before we get to kind of the in-flight stuff and the part where I get the good part of the show, where I like to learn from you, is preheating. And I'll throw oil in with this since we're talking about it, and I'll get that one out of the way quick. And that is, quite frankly, you should be using multi-weight oil year-round, period. I know that it's great to say, like, well, we're going to switch, or I've heard that in warm temperatures you should use a straight weight oil. We are plagued in this industry with lots of, like, things that people do because of what they learned decades ago, and then from the person decades before them. I've actually been fortunate enough to be part of gone to Phillips and to Aeroshell and see the testing and see the data, and I can tell you the old wives' tale about this stuff is not accurate. The best thing you can get is actually going to be multi-weight year-round, and from what I've seen from the Phillips test, I really prefer the Phillips XC20W50. They also have a version with Victory that has the Lycoming additive, but this protects your engine against corrosion better year-round than you will get out of a straight weight, regardless of who tells you what about the thickness of how it looks. They did the tests. You can go and reach out to them. They can send you the data. They've gone and tested it, and it's very, very compelling. So year-round, I think it's really important to do that. The other thing is it's important to equip your aircraft to make sure your oil temperature is getting up to the right temperature while you are flying in very, very cold temperatures. That
I have a problem with that. You asked me what I do with my Citabria. That's one of the things. I have to put the oil cooler baffle it won't even come off the peg.
Yeah, you got to put it. So if you have a winterization kit that maybe plugs, blocks some of the inlet air or blocks part of your oil cooler, or you may have to go and talk to your mechanic about taping it off. Don't just experiment on your own. Talk to the mechanic about doing that so you do it right. Many oil coolers are dual channel, and you have to do the right part of the oil cooler to block it off. You do the wrong part, it's not going to help you at all. You're going to be doing a part of the cooler that never gets hot. So talk to your mechanic, do it the right way, but do that when it comes to oil. And then the last part is preheating, and this one's also really important, and that is when you preheat, you got to preheat everything. We want the entire cowl forward, the entire everything that's under the cowl. So put a cowl blanket on it. Get a thorough system like a Tannis system or something like that, or if you can't, then use a blower or some other system, but heat everything. So the battery, the starter adapter, the alternator, bearings, hoses, connections, cables that get stiff, everything gets nice and warm, and only do it when you need it.
When do you need it? When do you need to preheat?
Well, good point. Okay, I personally say above 40, anything below 40 degrees, and I'm preheating, period.
Okay, I've been using like freezing 32, so.
Look, it's true that the engine manufacturers will have numbers much lower than that, without a doubt. I choose to be more conservative about it. They're coming out with numbers that meet their certification and meet what they have proven in testing, absolutely. But I don't want to run the risk, because who cares about plugging it in versus the risk of scuffing or anything else? It's just not worth it. So I'll always preheat below 40, personally.
Okay.
But do it all thoroughly so that you're doing, and don't do it when you don't need to. Do it only because before a flight. And the reason that I do this is because I was really, really fortunate. The folks that were behind CamGuard in the very beginning, I love CamGuard, I use it, great stuff. They went into detail with me, teaching me about the effect of temperature on corrosion. And that was really interesting, because we're always taught, does the aircraft live by the ocean? Is it near salt? Is it near other things? But we don't think about temperature. And it turns out that the effect of temperature on the rate of corrosion is dramatic. It's exponential, actually, but it's dramatic. And so if you see an aircraft that's sitting there sort of abandoned in a snowdrift and it's 10 degrees out, it's actually fairly safe, because the corrosion's happening at a very, very slow rate, because it's a chemical process. But when you go and you heat your engine, you heat the oil, you heat everything under there, and you're not going to fly for a week. You're just creating this subtropical environment, right, that is going to be chewing away for no reason, because you're heating oil which contains acids that are from your combustion process. It's evaporating, it's depositing all of this on different parts of the engine. Why? So I just encourage people, please don't preheat more than you need. Preheat 6 hours before you go flying or whatever you need to. Do it thoroughly, and then you're good.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It does make a lot of sense. So I would like to think we should talk about preparing your airplane, like pre-flighting it. I think first of all, give yourself plenty of extra time to do the things that you're going to try to talk yourself out of because of how cold it is, and because of how long everything is going to take. The process takes longer, so give yourself plenty of time so that you can do the correct one of the two speeds that I often tell you about. But also, if there is anything frozen on the airplane, it needs to come off. Anything, even up to a 64th inch of frost can affect the lift of the airplane, but it also indicates there could be some moisture somewhere frozen that you don't know about. Be very careful with that. Flight controls, if you feel them rubbing, ratcheting, any kind of frozen in there. Also, when I do a walk around, I will do a tactile feel of all the flight controls. Sometimes when something's icy, you can't see it, but you can feel it. It might feel really glassy smooth, and it also might feel sandpaper rough. Either way, you need to know it's there, and if it's there, do not fly. That should be a hard rule, hard stop, do not fly. And pay special attention to your inlets. Anywhere air goes in, you don't want to be blocked, so pitot tubes, static ports, anything like that. Also, I walk around with an opened up paper clip, and anywhere there's a drain hole on a flight control surface, I've actually taken off in St. Louis with the airplane looked totally clear of ice. Everything was clean, but apparently it had been raining and water got into the flight control area, and it froze. In the holes, the drain holes froze, and then some more water got in and it froze. My flight controls were so out of balance. Watch out for that. You want all the drain holes to be clear, free and clear. Best thing is if you're just not sure, get it in the hangar, let it warm up, and let it, drip until everything's melted. But then of course you need to wipe it off dry before you go flying as well. You don't want anything that melted to refreeze, especially if you had like frost. An example would be frost on the top of your cowling. It melts off, gets water down the side over your static port, and then you take it outside to go flying, and all of a sudden now the static port just froze over the top of the static port. Right. You can imagine what would happen there. Yeah. We have to be careful with, I don't know if you got a picture there of a contaminated windshield on one of the airplanes I flew recently, but
yeah, I can definitely find that for you.
One of the things this happened, and it's very tempting to just turn on what we have as window heat to alleviate this problem, but you need to take consideration where the water is going to go when it melts, and what is below the windows, what is anywhere that you're going to melt ice, where is the water going to go, and you want to be real careful about that. Yeah, so that was the windshield wipers, good, but if we could turn the window heat on right there and just melt it all, and it would go right down over the RVSM static ports, which are also heated on our airplane. But it's just something to give thought to. Where's the water going to go when it melts, and is it going to cause a problem? So be very careful about that.
I think the other thing that I would add to that is to be prepared for an issue. When you talk about that, one of the things that you mentioned that's so important is the idea that when you have temperature swings, you get melting, you get refreezing. That can affect things you can't even see inside, as you mentioned, a flight control. That can also happen inside a spinner. And so you could melt, you can get water accumulation that then flash freezes inside a spinner. If you start that engine and you feel a massive vibration, shut it down immediately. Just like you need to be prepared for a problem with your VSI or your altimeter, be prepared for these things to not go well because of the risk of freezing.
Right, and so on that note, good segue to starting the engine. You start the engine. What do we train our students to look at right after engine start? And if you don't get it within 30 seconds, shut it down.
Oil pressure.
Yeah, so what do you do here? Are you going to get oil pressure in 30 seconds, or is it allowable to maybe let it get a little bit longer to try to turn? No?
No way. No way. You should get, at colder temperatures, oil pressures are higher, they're not lower. If you are not getting oil flow, which is what you need to see oil pressure, you should shut down immediately. The 30 seconds is basically open up the engine or not opening up the engine limit. It is not like you don't look and wait for 30 seconds. If you're not getting oil pressure, coming, if that needle's not coming up right away, then there's a risk that you have lost the prime that's in the oil system. Now, cold doesn't usually do that, but an oil change can do it. Meaning, if you just recently had the aircraft in the shop, you had the oil changed, maybe they left for the day and then came back the next day. It shouldn't happen, but it can. That then oil from the sump to the pump, basically, loses that prime, and then the pump can't get through the air gap, and you need to shut that thing down immediately.
Right, and that makes a lot of sense. What you won't see come right up probably is the temperature. And I saw another question in there about what temperature would you wait to add any power or to do your run up or to take off. That's something I know. I want to talk more about the flying stuff, but I want to know from you, have I been doing it correctly? What do I want to see on the oil temperature gauge before I take off?
Well, you know, what's interesting is it works opposite to flying, right? You should be able to see your oil temps come up to the green while on the ground easier than when you're in flight, because you're not getting all that airflow through the engine, through the oil cooler, as you would get in normal flight. So I think it's quite important that you do get your oil temperatures in the green before you take off, especially if you are dealing with a constant speed prop, because you know, the oil can congeal in there just as easily. You want to make sure you're doing enough checks of it, because it's not just checking the function of the prop, you're cycling oil through it.
Right,
and those are fairly small passages.
Yeah. I've seen people just do one cycle and that's good. And sometimes that's okay, but not when it's cold. Definitely when it's cold, you want to give it 3 full cycles, cycle that warm oil into there. I usually will see it come up. I want to see in my operating practices that if I see it come off the peg, the oil temperature come off the peg, okay, I can add power for taxi. And if it's coming up, you know, it's in the range now. If it's indicating off the peg, it's warm enough to do a run up. I would not take off until it gets up, you know, pretty close to the green or in the green, for sure.
I think that's fair. I mean, like, as we had mentioned during our last show, and we were talking about how to crash an airplane, when it comes to oil and lubrication, it's a matter of torque. It's a matter of force inside the engine. How much are you essentially trying to putting pressure on that boundary layer of oil? And as long as you're keeping that low, you're keeping the RPMs low, you're not doing a lot until it really starts doing its job and circulating everywhere, I think you're fine.
Okay, well, very good. I'd like to get on to some tips and tricks for actually flying in the cold and the ice, because I know that we're already getting, like, you know, time flies when we're talking, which is awesome, but I want to get to that. And I know that when you're driving, who hasn't gone out during a snowstorm or whatever? People in California don't go to the mountains, can just take a break for a second. But who hasn't seen that? And you're driving nice and slow and careful, and someone is just in a 4-wheel drive truck, just motors down at 50, 60 miles an hour, passing everybody and just driving like they don't understand the laws of physics, and they don't apply to them because they have 4-wheel drive. In an airplane, you want to try to not accelerate rapidly. You want to use a low rate of acceleration. And just a quick discussion on acceleration. That doesn't mean going fast. Acceleration is a change in velocity, right? A velocity consists of a direction or a magnitude. So you don't want to change direction quickly. You don't want to change a magnitude quickly, whether it be accelerating or decelerating. Either way, small changes, very light changes. Taxi gingerly on ice and snow. You just never know when you're going to slip. And once it slips, don't slam on the brakes. Hitting them harder won't help. Whether you have anti-lock, anti-skid or not, it's not going to help you. So be ginger. If you are sliding for some unknown reason, you find yourself sliding in an airplane and you can't slow down taxiing at idle, and the brakes are skidding or they're locking up the wheels, remember, you can do the seaplane method, turn it down to 1 mag, reduce to 1 mag, put your carb heat on if you have that, and lower your idle even more. And you can really get down to a low power setting. And if you have to, pull the mixture back and stop it to slow down if you have to, or pull the mixture back until it's running rough and slow, then back in again. And you can kind of modulate your power to keep a slow speed. Not only should you check your flight controls free and clear in the, when you first start out, when you do it during your run up, but before you advance the power for takeoff, do it again. Something might be in there, something might have frozen. That's when you're going to need them the most, is as soon as you want to lift off. And that's not the time to find out something's frozen. So definitely do a flight control check just before you take off. Always leave yourself an out. Plan to fly. Don't get yourself boxed into a corner. So I don't mind taking some risks, like I'll walk on a balance beam if there's a pad below me. I want that pad. So I've actually taken students up to experience icing conditions, and this was whatever the statute of limitations is, it was that long ago or more. But I had an out as long as the freezing levels were above the MEA. I could get down to the MEA into warm air, we could melt it off. I don't do that anymore. This is more of an old school trick, but you really did learn a lot. One is how fast the ice builds if you inadvertently get into icing conditions. Of course, I'm talking about IFR pilots. It could be VFR pilots, even in low visibility or mist or something like that. Freezing temperatures plus precipitation are icing conditions, period. Do not fly, oh, it's kind of a dry snow. I mean, a lot of people are watching this going, I fly in dry snow all the time, and my friends in Alaska, I hear you laughing from here, I get it, but if you're not accustomed to it and you don't know when, then assume it's not going to be good. If you have experience with it and you know, well, that's a different story. If you're watching for ice, if you're not sure, like in flight, and you're watching to see, am I picking up ice or not? The ice is going to build up. It's going to accrue on the smallest radius parts of the airplane first. So the leading edge of your stabilizer is going to pick up ice before the leading edge of your wing. The temp probe that sticks out of a lot of windshields, or if you can see a temp probe, or if you have a tube that's a pitot tube, or the smaller the radius, the earlier it's going to pick up ice if you're in icing conditions. Another thing I teach Piper pilots to do, or Cessna pilots that have a wire mesh, screen over the air inlet, is open the air vent a little bit. If you stop getting airflow into the airplane, I know it's cold and you don't want to, but you can get a good mix of that and the cabin heater. But when the air's not coming in anymore, that mesh is frozen over on the leading edge, and that's the first indicator. I learned that from flying IFR in a Piper Archer, and all of a sudden it was just getting hot because we had our jackets on and we just wanted more air, and I opened the vent by my ankle all the way, nothing's coming out. Like, really? Well, knowing where that vent is, I look out there and, oh my gosh, it's solid white. So that will ice up. It's a good indicator.
Wow.
Good way to see.
So Brian, does that mean, like, when we're experiencing extremely cold temperatures, as we've done here recently, it's 20 degrees out, it's 15 degrees out, and it's only going to be colder up high. If it's snowing, it's still an icing risk.
If it's really cold with no warm temperatures aloft, there are times when snow can be dry and it's not going to freeze or adhere to the airplane. But your airplane surface, you need to know what the temperature of your airplane surface is. That snow hitting it might melt it, and then it'll refreeze. You could get icing in some snow conditions. The fact is you don't know. So I'm going to answer conservatively, yes, that is icing conditions. Visible moisture and icing temperatures below 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 Celsius. Those are icing.
If we're really going fast, there's that friction heat, right?
If you go fast enough, you get over about 230, 250 knots, you do see it build. And that's, you laugh about it, but we use that in the airliner. So we're climbing up and we're approaching a freezing temperature, or the anti-ice temperature. And if you're approaching 10,000 feet, we're about to lower the nose and start hauling fast. And and when we do that, the temperature starts picking up because the total air temperature increases due to the ram rise of that pressure that you're talking about. So yes, that happens. But then eventually, like when you're coming down, you're above freezing, and then at 10,000 you're going to level off and decelerate. Well, you're going to watch that temperature conversely lower itself, and you're about to get into icing conditions as well when that happens. So yeah, that's a factor in some airplanes, not to be dismissed, but it's true. I know you and your Bonanza, it's probably a factor.
No, it doesn't work for me, but in your Citabria, I've seen it.
Exactly.
The leading edges are always fraying from the heat.
Yeah, and just like when you were landing on that ice runway, which I really want to try. I mean, I've landed on, O'Hare had an ice runway last year. I landed on that. Um, was it the Des Moines had an ice runway? There wasn't water below the ice. That's the difference, I guess. First of all, how thick does it have to be? But second of all, are there any landing techniques, like you wouldn't just land and hit the brakes, right?
That is very, very, very accurate. And I did 2 landings on the ice, and it was sheer ice when we did it up there. I will say it's a lot of fun. I don't want anyone to avoid it. It is very much worth doing. To me, the most important part of the technique is the same most important part to any landing that you're going to be doing anywhere, which is you need to be on speed. You need to have the aircraft configured properly. You need to be essentially ahead of the aircraft before you touch down. Everything else will work out if you then touch down, don't go for the brakes.
Yeah.
Use your rudder is more effective, much more effective, because it's really controlling everything. Get yourself to idle, touch down at idle, and then use a little bit of uniform tapping to feel what effect you have. And it's also very important, of course, to be symmetrical if you're on that straightaway, on that runway going forward. That's very, very important. But every year, I don't know about every year, but frequently we see on the news out of the Alton Bay Ice Runway when they're open that there is an accident or an incident. And I will tell you the ones that I have seen are almost all the same, which is it has nothing to do with the ice. It is usually an aircraft coming in, and it's kind of like landing at Oshkosh. They're focused on coming in, they are worried, and then they land short of the runway, and they hit a snowbank. Or they lose directional control, having nothing to do with the ice. It is usually a situation of someone who's really lost control of the aircraft before you ever touch down to the ice.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's good to know. I would think most pilots, if they're conscientious enough to show up here, they're probably conscientious enough to take it easy, fly a nice stabilized approach, touch down, as smoothly and apply even brakes, if any at all. Aerodynamic braking is probably good, but don't plan on making the first turnoff. Try to use more of the runway for aerodynamic braking rather than trying to lock up your wheels. Once you do that, you really can lose control. And believe it or not, I felt that in the airliner when the analog brakes they're giving, and you can feel it when it happens. And I just let off and just use more runway. Hopefully there's some available. On that note, don't select to go to airports with just enough runway. Use some airports that have plenty of runway for, with some runway to spare for what you need. But listen, also look at the NOTAMs. I think a lot of us get a little lax in the NOTAMs. Winter is not a time to get lax at looking at NOTAMs, because quite often there'll be one runway closed for plowing. Here in that last ice storm we had in the Dallas Metroplex, DFW Metroplex, they're not used to that. And every airport, even Alliance, which is where Amazon, so if a lot of you have your Amazon packages late, that's why. But every towered airport and all the non-towered airports, we only had 2 airports open, was Love Field and DFW. Everything else was NOTAM closed, runway closed by NOTAM during that. And you don't want to head out somewhere, especially if there aren't a lot of choices nearby, and then find out that the runway is closed, you can't land there, and then you've got to get somewhere. Hopefully you have enough fuel to get somewhere. So check the NOTAMs. Also check the NOTAMs before you land. A lot of times if you're going to places like Aspen, Telluride, they're going to be plowing regularly, and they might be treating the runway, and there might be equipment on the runway, and they might have it closed just for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and coordinate if it's a non-towered airport. There was a business jet that went into Telluride several years ago and did not check the NOTAMs and did not even make any radio calls, because it's a non-towered airport and I don't have to talk to anybody. So they just flew right in, they were IFR, and landed, and they collided with a snowplow that was on the runway. Wow. So yeah, very unfortunate. So don't ignore your NOTAMs for sure. Make sure you watch for closed runways or maybe a runway that is too rough to land on.
The other thing that you said something I think really important, which had to do with takeoff, and I want to say that when taking off, it's the same concept. You don't want to gun the engine. You want to fly very gradually. flying if you apply the power gradually on sheer ice, and this is sheer ice. I mean, you come into taxi, someone will grab your wingtip and help you spin into your spot.
Oh my God.
And they're grabbing it with one hand.
Oh my
And
gosh. So
just
full power, you're
spinning
just
your
gonna go
airplane around. It's hilarious. I love it.
right off to the left.
But right, but if I were to just firewall it, you'd turn. You'd immediately get that P factor and that torque steer, and that doesn't help. So you really want to go gradually, which kind of lends itself to the other same concept. You don't want to make yourself a test pilot. Alton Bay, for example, is 2,900 feet, sheer ice. I don't think that's super short. That was fine. We had another half a runway left, both on takeoff and landing. I wasn't really worried, but that's because we're doing takeoffs and landings using the same technique that we've done a whole bunch of times before. I think where people get into trouble is when they get in conditions like this and they start to try to do something different than what they usually do, and they're essentially putting themselves in a different flight regime because they haven't. You see, like, well, do you do a short field takeoff, or do you do a soft field takeoff, or do you do this? Well, I don't know. How many of them do you do? Are you within exactly what you do, or are you going to try something right now as your personal test pilot of your skills, where you're saying, I'm going to come in 5 knots slower than I usually do in order to make this landing? Well, you don't know how your plane's going to act then, because you just said you're going to do this 5 knots slower than you usually do.
Yeah, and just like when you start flying that airplane behind you, which I know is going to happen real soon, right?
It is.
Yeah, that's awesome. But you're not going to just go pour on full power. You want to get a little bit of airspeed to get some air over the rudder. That gets your rudder some effectiveness. And all your flight controls get some effectiveness if you build up a little bit of speed. So get to 20, 30 knots, and then put the rest of the power in so that you have enough flight control authority to maybe counteract some of that left turning tendency, which, by the way, I'm writing about in my column, last 2 columns and my next 2 columns in my CFI Care column, which you can see on my website. I'm writing about the left turning tendencies, so that kind of plays into that. But also, I saw some people were wanting the website, not just the link to this checklist. I see a lot of questions coming in that will be answered by this checklist, one of which is wheel pants. So I'll ask you about that. Get this checklist, and a lot of these questions you're asking are going to be on there. It's like like Jeff said, it's more than just a checklist. So what do you say? Wheel pants on or off?
Off for the winter if you can. There's too many problems that come up. It just costs you money more than anything else. They're going to get cracked and damaged if you fill them with slush and get ice chunks hitting them and things like that.
So take your pants off for the winter. Oh, that's perfect.
Yes, take your pants off for the winter.
Pants off for the winter.
Bad stuff going on.
I do that on my airplane. Even just if I'm going to grass fields, I take the wheel pants off. But yeah, also if you're gonna,
it makes sense. So Brian, with the remaining time that we've got, because there isn't much, I just want to kind of like get us to like your kind of last thoughts about it, and I'm gonna fire off mine by saying, make sure you're putting the plane away at the end of the flight in a way that it's ready for you the next time. Do everything you can to protect yourself from snow, from all the other things. If you have a dehumidifier that you can use, I know a lot of people don't have power where they tie down outside, so you don't have all these options. If you do have power, a dehumidifier should be run all the time. The preheater should not. Do whatever you can that way. And then also when it comes time to clear your plane, when you go there and if there's like snow around, do everything carefully, do everything manually, and do it in a way that protects the aircraft. If you can't clear your plane carefully and protect it, don't fly. It's just not worth it. We get into this kind of very stressed survivalist mode in the cold, and you sort of feel like I can't get the door open, so I'm gonna, I got to get the door open. It's sticking, so I'm gonna pull on the handle, or I'm gonna pull until it breaks. Like, you're gonna regret all of these things on the next sunny, warm day, even if that's months away. But you don't want to scrape things. You don't want to just pull out a credit card and try to scratch off all the stuff on the wings. Get a sprayer. Fill it with, warm polypropylene glycol, as long as you've tested it to make sure it doesn't stain your paint. Come up with things. Don't rush it. You can break windows. Don't put hot.
Isopropyl alcohol that you can spray bottle.
Yeah, yeah, you can do that. Don't put anything hot on a window. Don't put, don't shock anything. Just treat it like you don't have to fly and you know what's coming. And then move the plane when you can with what little snow removal possible. Get the plane on the ramp and then clean the spot. Don't try to clean everything around the plane. Move the plane and then do it. I have seen snowblowers go into aircraft. Don't do it. And blowing snow on someone else's plane is a sure way to piss them off. But other than that,
fun. If you are at an airport where you're in a situation where you can get de-ice, some FBOs can de-ice your airplane for you and spray it. It's very expensive, probably cost prohibitive for most of us little airplane drivers, but it is something you can do. And if you do it, be sure that you're aware of holdover times. Know that once you're blasted, if you're in any kind of precipitation still going on, know that it doesn't last forever, and know the limitations. And the FAA publishes holdover times for different types of fluids. So that's just something that probably applies to very few people watching, but out of the 6 people who are, 1 or 2 might. In any event, plan ahead, plan so as to have plenty of time so you can operate slowly. And I think the most important thing is, and you alluded to this just a minute ago, be okay with saying no, not doing this. There are a few things that are just a hard stop, no. Icing conditions, if in doubt, don't do it. Be aware, however, like when you get your weather briefing, get a full weather briefing every time. Get the temperatures aloft. It's very important. If you inadvertently start picking up icing, wouldn't that knowledge be powerful to know that it's below freezing up at 8,000 feet if you're sludging along at 6 getting ice? Ice pellets are indicative of warmer air aloft until you cross the front, and then they're not. So watch out for that. So get a full weather briefing all the time. But if you don't like it or the hair on the back of your neck is standing up, don't fly. It's okay. There's a lot of honor in canceling a flight because you just don't think it's right. If you want to,
that's what I'd love to see more people do, is not fly when they're getting
right.
something.
And
you feel right.
You had an advice of carrying a bag, like so you don't have get-home-itis. Always have a bag to spend the night somewhere, just in case things deteriorate or whatever happens. You're not pressured to go home because you don't have a toothbrush. You got one.
Yeah, exactly. And the same is true when you're just clearing your plane from stuff.
Yeah.
If you get off whatever 80% of it and you're looking and the rest is kind of difficult to get off, it'd be nice if you just say, that's what we've done for today. Come back tomorrow and it might have melted. The sun will get to that layer. It'll do things. But anyway, exactly. Lots of fun stuff. Hopefully we got some value out for all of you out there. I definitely appreciate you joining. We'll do more. I'm going to put up now on the sheet the link that will get you the winter operations checklist here. And keep in mind that a recording of tonight's broadcast will be available on YouTube. It takes us a couple days to get that up, but that will be out there on YouTube for you. And then at the same time, I want to thank all the folks that make this possible, and especially Avemco. If you talk to Avemco and you mention SocialFlight, you get 5% off from them. They have the details of all the terms and conditions for it. We gave this little, look at this guy. This is my favorite little Avemco thing, the Avemco flying teddy bear guy. So we brought him up and gave these away when we were up there at Alton Bay. That was fun. Again, thanks to Michelin for that flight, Lightspeed, and Hartzell for just some crazy stuff that we saw, and everybody on this board that makes all of this possible. And now, Brian, tell everyone what's coming again, because 2 days from now, February 12th, the Schiff show, my favorite show, is coming.
Yep, I love to talk aviation, and I love to talk Schiff all the time. I'm spreading it all the time. But I tell you what, I saw a lot of people commenting on what if I'm watching it on a device and I can't scan the QR code. Take a screenshot. You can tap and hold and do it. But I tell you what, I'll promise you this. If you sign up for my email blasts, go to this theschiffshow.tv. You don't have to watch the Schiff show, but you can if you want. And up on the top, you can subscribe to the email blast. I will put a link to the copy. I can't type it. It's a really long Dropbox link. So that's why I can't give it out tonight. But
maybe we can put it in YouTube, in the description on the YouTube thing. We can probably get it in there.
Perfect. We'll put the link in the description on YouTube, but also if you sign up for my email and subscribe to it, you'll get one tomorrow night. I'll have this on it, but I'll also put a link to it on my website, captainschiff.com. I'll put it on the front page of my website, just a link to the winter flight operations checklist, and you can click on that and get it as well. So captainschiff.com, or the description in the YouTube video as well.
And then next Tuesday, so that is Tuesday, February 17th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. Darren Pleasance will be here with me on SocialFlight Live. If you're not already registered for that show, please socialflightlive.com. That is how you do it. There's no other dots. There's no other hash. Socialflightlive.com. And I'm really, really looking forward to this discussion. Again, you'll be reading all sorts of stuff in the news of what people's theories are, what's happening, and what a lot of people are doing to try to change the situation of him no longer being at the helm of AOPA. But this show is really going to be about hearing what the last year has been like in making change in general aviation and what he would like to see happen next, not just for organizations like AOPA, but for all of general aviation. I have found that Darren is one of the most positive, inspiring people I have ever known in general aviation. It's really, really great, and regardless of what role he is playing, he should be part of all of our flying lives, and has learned an awful lot by being out there at so many events with so many people to really see this is what's happening. This is what's happening with the next generation. This is what's happening regulatory stuff. This is what we need to do as kind of a passionate group of people that love aviation. And so it's really going to be a wonderful discussion, and I cannot wait to hear from him. And then we are back here. Well, let's see. We've got Eileen Collins on SocialFlight Live on February 24th. She's the first woman shuttle commander. And then Cockpit2Cowl back here March 10th. We're going to talk about something cool coming up, and we'll figure that one out and let you all know.
Yeah, and again, the Schiff show, you alluded to it, Thursday night, 2 nights from tonight. Just go to theschiffshow.tv, and you can watch all the past episodes, and you can watch the live one if it's tomorrow or Thursday night at 7 p.m. Central Time. And we're going to be giving away, we got game show. You can win one of these, someone asked about merch, a Schiff show mug or one of our shirts, and some other great prizes we're going to be giving away.
You got it. All right. Well, Brian, thank you for another amazing show. I love it. I learn stuff every single time, and I've got my own notes that I learned from you. Everybody go to the winter operations checklist. I'll turn that off now, but it will be available to all of you. And again, thanks so much for taking time out of your evening to join us here on Cockpit2Cowl. Thanks to everybody else. Hopefully I'll see you in person. Maybe you get one of these guys. Until next time, for me at SocialFlight, Jeff Simon, I wish you all blue skies.
Good night, everyone.